So again, we just thank the Lord for this time that He has given to us as we share. Please, this is not a Bible study. I've heard that said, but we're more looking at a contemporary issue. We want to look at some of the information out there, and then how we as Christians are responding to this very, very important matter of intimacy, the place of children, couples in this very, very difficult time, challenging time for a lot of people. I am appreciating that I am speaking mainly to couples in this conversation, but as well appreciating that there are persons in the conversation as well who are not married, and indeed persons who may not have a particular intense interest in the topic, but thank you still for being a part of the conversation. I'd love for us then to begin on an understanding of intimacy. What is it that we're talking about when we talk about intimacy, and particularly when we talk about intimacy in the context of marriage? Intimacy is about being comfortable with your partner. It's not being afraid to be vulnerable with your partner. That this brother that you see on your screen who has been with you over and over again says, intimacy is into me you see. Into me you see. The idea of being totally open, totally vulnerable to that person who is your partner, with whom you share at that level. We want to add to that as well that intimacy between husband and wife is one of those characteristics of a very healthy marriage. For some husbands, intimacy means sex, plain and simple. For wives, intimacy is something far more emotional. In fact, without emotional closeness, sex may be meaningless. In other words, a person or persons may be involved in the sex act, but there is no intimacy. There is no into me you see, as Kevin would frame it. It's very important for us to understand that this is a fulcrum of what we're talking about. Intimacy, how we are relating to each other as husband and wife in the context of marriage, the place of sex, the place of other expressions of intimacy. Now, those who study in the area tell us that there are many, many kinds of intimacy that we can explore. All right. There is emotional intimacy, and we're guided by this slide there. There is physical intimacy. There is intellectual intimacy, getting to know the person, how you're having conversation and discussion with the person, talking about different issues, how you're expressing your thoughts in that space. And of course, there's spiritual intimacy. How do we feel as a couple spiritually connected? Worship time together, understanding some of the things that drive our beliefs, and that sense of spiritual bond that we have as spouse. Very, very important in understanding at least those 4 areas of intimacy: the intellectual, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual, as types of expressions of intimacy. And these are important to couples, as indeed they are to persons who may be in other forms of relationships. But as we have said, the focus here is the husband and wife context of intimacy, and as it is affecting us in the church. Now, as we know, we are facing this pandemic, corona, COVID-19 pandemic. And with it has come quite a bit of dislocation. If you just go to the next slide, we'll have that. All right. And because of it too, there have been quite a bit of shift in sexual behavior, not only among non-Christians, but also among Christians. And the information is showing that, a number of things in terms of how the pandemic, how the manifestation of the pandemic has been affecting our sexual behavior and our behavior in terms of intimacy. I would just mention 4 for the purposes of this evening. 1, online pornography searches has gone up. More people are searching the porn sites, and this includes Christians, and this includes married Christians. All right. Secondly, sex toy sales have also gone up, and we're also being told that Christians are included in this mix, that Christians are also buying sex toys. This is what some of the surveys are revealing. Then we're also being told that some dating apps more dating apps are being downloaded. So more persons are interested in downloading dating apps. Again, I did not find the disaggregation here if it only had to do with non, or if it also had to do with Christians. Significantly too, we're being told that erotic posts have gone up on social media. In other words, people are talking more on social media about sex and sexuality and intimacy issues. Not only are they talking about it, but more people, Christians included again, showing parts of their bodies to each other, showing parts of their bodies to their spouses, showing parts of their bodies to other persons. And that has gone up significantly in terms of what's happening in the social media landscape. So just those are just some of the things that have been emerging as a consequence of the pandemic in terms of sex, sexuality, intimacy issues, and how these are being manifest in the internet space, in cyberspace, and so on, in terms of persons exposing themselves, persons purchasing sex toys, and so on. These are just some of the trends that are being picked up by those who are doing the research and looking at the data in the field. Here's the first part of the conversation that we have to address. We want to get down to how home is being affected, how children are being affected, and how couples are being affected in these conversations. The next thing we want to look at is what is being called in the pandemic skin hunger. Skin hunger. And what do we mean by skin hunger? The idea of skin hunger is being touched. The pandemic now means 6 feet apart, masks, hand washing. Therefore means less touching, less kissing, less contact. Now, as human beings, we are designed for touch. From the cradle to the coffin, we are designed for touch. In fact, some studies have indicated that without touch, we are creatures of touch. Now, there are those who have framed love languages and have made touch one of the love languages. It seems though that in terms of how we are constructed to function as human beings, as social beings, as gregarious beings, we are made to connect with each other at the physical level. And significantly and importantly, we are designed to touch, to hug, to hold hands, to kiss, to give a pat on the back, to give a toe rub and all of these. But what the pandemic has done, it has significantly taken that away from us. We are only allowed to elbow touch, and not for a prolonged period. And of course, we have to keep our 6 feet distance between each other. That makes things even more difficult in the general space. Consequent upon that is what has been, the doctors are calling the skin hunger, also called touch deprivation, and so on. All right, so it's very important for us to know that this is also part of what is affecting people. So in this space, there's not the handshaking that is happening, should and very often happens at the workplace. Friends are no longer allowed to hug as we normally would. There's no patting on the back as there normally would be. And at the more intimate level, there is none of that hand holding, no back scratching, no foot rubbing in that more intimate space that we would have. Some couples are still nervous. For instance, if the coronavirus were to come to somebody's home, somebody will have to leave the bedroom, for instance, to be elsewhere, to be taken care of. And in some cases, food has to be pushed under a door, soiled clothes, in some cases is being burnt. All these things have been happening because of what the pandemic has brought. So there's a problem with what is being called skin touch deprivation, and how that has been impacting on some people, and how that has been damaging some of the relationships, as we will see later on in the conversation. All right. For some, the pandemic has also brought on a decline in sensual touching. So people are no longer interested in each other sexually. In fact, according to a 2017 study, the ideal touching speed there would have been 3 centimeters per second. That is not happening. And touching is supposed to release this love hormone called oxytocin. And because touching is not happening, people are not touching each other. All right. And this is something that must be of interest, and that must be an issue of concern. So there has been a general reduction in the desire for sexual intimacy, again, contingent on the fact that we're not supposed to be touching when we are creatures that are generally disposed to touch. So what do we find? We find that as people reportedly increase pandemic-related stressors, they are also reporting decreased desire for their partner. We're too occupied and concerned about so many other things. And so the desire for sex and sexual intimacy has also declined. So Justin Lamila says, when you see each other all the time, the sense of mystery goes away as well. So the fact is that for large sections of society, and we have had to face this too, that we were on lockdown up to when was it, Monday? We all had to be locked down away from others. And a part of the conversation has been that the effect has been that we lose that sense of mystery and mystique because we have to be spending so much time together. And that also means that we are no longer as interested because the mystique is gone, the mystery is gone. And as somebody says, 2 zebras will not mate in front of a lion. All right, I think you should see that on the next, the slide that comes after this. Can we go there, please? All right, yeah, so, so here we are then. The divorce as well, the divorce rate in the pandemic. all across the world. And the studies are again showing that the divorce rates are increasing in the world. Relationship experts warn the pandemic-induced breakup curve may not yet have peaked. In other words, there's a feeling that there will be more divorce on account of the pandemic. This is an issue that is not only affecting people in the world, non-Christians, but it is also a matter that is also affecting Christians as well. Divorce applications and breakup skyrocketing across the United Kingdom and around the world. Leading British law firm Stewart's logged, listen, a 122% increase in inquiries between July and October last year compared to the previous period. More people inquiring about divorce. Charity Citizens Advice is also saying that there's a reported spike in searches for online advice on how to end a relationship. So there as well, we're seeing that people are asking, how do I end my marriage? How do I end my relationship online? And those who have done the studies and research are telling us that more people are asking, how do I end this relationship? All right. Thirdly, in the US, a major legal contract creation site recently announced a 34% rise in sales of its basic divorce agreement. 34%. With newlyweds who'd got married in the previous 5 months making up 20% of the sales. In other words, the younger couples, those who just got married, are now asking, how can I end this marriage? According to the research, according to those studies. All right. And then, of course, as we have said, and I think some of us would know this before, that there's been a similar pattern in China, which has one of the world's strictest lockdown rules. Sweden, the same thing. And some of those first world countries are really, really suffering in this regard. So what we're seeing is that the pandemic has very, very negatively affected family life, has very negatively affected marital relationships. And this must also be of concern to us as Christians. Are there some positive trends? Yes, we are also seeing in the research that in some measure, the pandemic has helped to bring some people closer together. It has helped to bring some people to work through their issues, know that they realize that they have to be living together. It has also caused some people to be more sensitive and to appreciate the burden, especially where wives in the home, husbands are now a little bit more appreciative of and sensitive to the workload of the home. It has also brought a great appreciation for work and the value of keeping work and home separate as much as possible, because the merging of the two in this new space has created untold problems. So those are some of the negatives, and here we'll just mention a few of the positives. What we'd like to do in this final section, and then we'll just open for some questions and conversation, is to answer specifically what happens in terms of children, intimacy, and the pandemic. Living life while under quarantine has compounded this problem 10 times over for most. Couples in many respects have lost their privacy. So the bedroom is now no longer as sacrosanct in terms of husband and wife space to do all the things that they usually would do. The exploring the stovetop, not now for cooking, but for heating up other things, may not be as readily available as it used to be because everybody's at home, and especially that the children are at home. So those have been some of the challenges. As well, the fact that children are no more at home than at school also means that caregivers are very often torn between the attention to be given to the children as against. Here then are some fears, sex fears, intimacy fears, we call them. So in the space of intimacy, one of the biggest fears, and perhaps I could go to that slide, please. One of the biggest fears is so the couple may want to spend some time together, but the children are around, and you may want to express pleasure of being touched, of sharing that intimate moment in the way that you normally would, but somebody is saying, the children, remember the children are here, or remember the children are not yet asleep, or something. How do we manage that? And I want that to be a part of the conversation in the second half of this sharing. Being loud, being free, being open with your spouse in that space is a matter of concern for many couples. That's one of the intimacy fears that come in the space of the pandemic, and that has left persons feeling hurt. And again, the fact that there are children around who may want to know what is happening, children around who may not be disposed to understand that parents need this kind of space, need this kind of intimacy, will want to investigate why is that bed squeaking so, or why are we getting that rhythmic movement from something behind the door, and may want to find out what is happening. The next challenge, of course, is the challenge of a spouse not being satisfied and how that may express itself in the family setting. Because whatever the causes of frustration, whatever those may be, they will very, very often filter out in the wider family. So an unsatisfied spouse may become grumpy, may become a challenge to the other members in the family setting. The last one perhaps I'd like to mention, and then hope that we can have some conversations about some of these issues, is the family with a single child. What do you do with that boy that he's the only one there? You want to have a time alone, but how are you going to have a time alone? What are you going to do with that boy, that girl? And there's nobody for him to play with, nobody to interact with, because he or she too will want to have physical contact, will want to have physical attention, will want to have that kind of personal intimacy at his level with one family member or another, or with both. But parents want to have that time by themselves. And sometimes there's this aspect of the tension that has to be contended with, that has to be dealt with in the marriage. What do we do with children? I think is the main issue that you have asked us to address. What do we do with children in a space where there are all of these variables contending against the safety and the sanctity of intimacy, and sexual intimacy in particular? What do we do in the context where we want to share intimately, but there's also the reality of children who obviously ought not to be brought in the context of that expression? What do we do when we want to protect them from those kinds of boundary violations? What do we do? So we are here now at what we're calling next steps in the conversation.